I know a lot of times the goal is 100% occupancy, but your goal really should be your revenue because that's what's going to protect your business. I'll give you an example. I've got a property not in Massachusetts, but it was up in Maine, and this is just a six roomer. His rates were roughly about 220 to 240 per night. By the end of this, we were pushing almost $400 per night.
David Mayfield is a hospitality business expert, licensed pilot, and real estate investor with over 17 years of industry experience. He has helped improve the performance of more than 2,200 properties, focusing on increasing occupancy, optimizing property management, streamlining operations, and elevating guest experience. Through his strategic guidance, David helps hospitality businesses grow efficiently and implement solutions that drive long-term success. Thank you so much for joining me here today, David. Though I've been a customer, a client for a few years now of ResNexus, and I love it. This is the first time I've ever met you, and thank you for joining me here today.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. It's an honor.
I've got a list of questions here that I told you before we started recording here about why, what I want ResNexus to do and to stand up many bed and breakfasts in central Massachusetts, which is the Massachusetts version of flyover country. It's very rural, it's very cute, quaint, all New England-y things, your mind's eye view, but there's really no accommodations along this dead railroad. And I want ResNexus to be a leader in helping to craft a way to build hospitality in this area. And we're going to talk about some things here. Turn around here. Oh, Queen. What's some key questions to explore here? How can small properties implement dynamic pricing and revenue strategies effectively? Let's talk about that. Let's talk about some of the stuff, what I'm wanting to talk about now, and you can start. We can have a conversation here, maybe not the printed out thing here so much, but let's talk about what I want to do.
Yeah, when you talk about dynamic pricing, you're talking about revenue management, and that's revenue management is a lot of different features. A lot of times when we're talking about dynamic pricing, we're talking about setting strategies where rates will change based on occupancy. And we can do that internally in ResNexus. And when you talk about a smaller property, 4 or 5 rooms, that's very cost effective because we built those tools in internally. We do have outside sources, revenue management companies that will compare and do what's called a comp set, comparing you to other alike B&Bs in the area. And if they change their rates, it'll change your rate or suggest a rate change. And that's nice because if you got a lot of competition, you feel like your rates aren't competitive, that can help you out. But let's go back to the small business. Sometimes a small business doesn't want to pay those extra charges for that. And so building the yield management piece, I'll give you an example. I've got a property not in Massachusetts, but it was up in Maine, and they had several neighbors. They were good friends with the neighbors that were also B&Bs about the same size. And this is just a six roomer. So they had friends that had 5 and 4 rooms, some that had up to 8 rooms, and they all had almost the same price set because they're like, my rooms are about the same size as yours. We're geographically in the same area. So that's where they decided to set their rates. When I got involved with the property, one of the properties, he had 100% occupancy well in advance. And I said, why? You're already occupied. You're getting a lot of phone calls for your peak season here that's coming up June, July. And he says, yeah, I'm getting a lot of phone calls. I'm getting a lot of people who are asking if they can be put on a wait list, if there's any openings to give them a call. And I'm like, yeah, your rates are probably a little bit too low. You might be leaving some money on the table. And this business owner, this property owner, he, of course, had his paradigm set that he had the right pricing because that's what his friends, his neighbors had. I convinced him finally to go ahead and change the rates. And keep in mind, this is just a six roomer. So once their first two rooms were booked, we went up by a small percentage, let's say 5%. And then another room was booked and we went up another percentage. His rates were roughly about 220 to 240 per night. By the end of this, we were pushing almost $400 per night. So he found out that he was going to reset his rates the next year, not base it on what the friends, the other B&Bs in the area, who probably hadn't changed their rates for the last 4 or 5 years,
Mm.
because that's what they thought was set. And so that's just a strategy that can help the small business owner that we've put in to our system and find out where that fair pricing is. Because you want to make sure that you're not undervaluing what you have. And I know a lot of times the goal is 100% occupancy, but your goal really should be your revenue because that's what's going to protect your business.
Okay. Here's a piece of jargon in the reservation world, or bed and breakfast. OTA. Can you explain to people what OTA is and how that impacts with Airbnbs and other sort of venues of tell us about that.
Yeah, so OTA stands for Online Travel Agency. And those are the Airbnbs. They also are called travel channels. So you'd have like your booking.com, Expedia Network owns hotels.com, Kayak, Orbitz, Travelocity, and a few that I'm not thinking of, quite a few. And that is also a good place to start for a business that feels like their occupancy isn't what they would like. You do have to pay commissions, but you don't pay a commission until they send you a customer. And
Okay.
hopefully we're capturing customers that wouldn't even think of staying with you. And with some of our marketing strategies, we can help that customer become a direct customer, right? So a customer that will book direct instead of going to the OTA. But for
Okay.
example, booking.com can bring in a lot of European travelers, and that's very popular for Massachusetts. As I know, a lot of people want to go to Boston and
Hmm.
see the beautiful Massachusetts area, see the fall foliage.
Here's a getting back to my grand vision here of a 100-mile trail across Massachusetts, dead railroad converted to linear parks. You're in Utah, you don't really see that what this is. You have a lot of bike trails that go around through the hills, and but this is a little different. And I mentioned earlier in our introduction that Massachusetts' third largest industry was tourism. And you mentioned European tourists. Actually, in the concept of looking at all the entryways for European tourists to come into the United States, Massachusetts, Boston at Logan Airport is in the top 10 places for European tourists. And what do European tourists know best? Is bike tourism. And
Yes.
so the my idea, and we're close to pulling this off. It's not like operational yet, but it's very close, is to have people coming in from Europe into Logan Airport with marry up with a tour promoter, a bike tour promoter, get bikes or bring their bikes with them on their airplanes, and then start in Boston and come across the state on this bike path all across Massachusetts.
Nice.
We need to have a bed and breakfast association, an umbrella over this so they can maybe pre-plan the entire trip from where people are to start in the Boston area or out here where I am at the western end of this in Northampton and pick and choose their bed and breakfast for whichever way they want to eastbound or westbound, what kind of place they want to stay in. I think we're going to need to stand up quite a few bed and breakfasts. Do you think that ResNexus might be interested in something like this to be the guest management system for the entire corridor? Do you have the capacity or the interest to expand to match what we need to do?
Yeah, absolutely. That's something that we were involved with Kentucky. And so they get a lot of bourbon trails, a lot of distilleries, a lot of fun. And this biking idea, it sounds great. It's so frustrating when you go someplace and you want something that's unique like this, and you're just thinking, why doesn't somebody supply this? And yeah, what a great concept and great idea for Boston and Massachusetts.
I'm going to write down that bourbon trail thing because this is small world, David. I used to work in the
Hmm.
railroad industry and I marketed rail freight and planned to start
Oh,
up and manage all these big transloading facilities. The company I worked for was called Pinsley Railroad Company. They're now been swallowed up by CSX and they're based in Jacksonville. But in the days when I worked there, back in the late 90s, they were, as I said, they were one of the country's first short line railroad operators. And historically, they had probably 30 railroads throughout the years, and they would run them until they didn't make sense anymore, then they would cease, they would abandon. In the late 90s, program there, and how they needed to tweak their laws in the background that made it possible for these dead railroads to become preserved, to be made into linear parks. And so there you go. In Kentucky, I've been there. Yes, sir. I know
yeah.
this is good. I know when talking to Andrew in the past, my contact person with ResNexus, he said
Yeah.
that you already had an association somewhere in your system that had up to 10 bed and breakfasts. Can you tell us about that and how that works and how they interact with each other and guests find them? Talk about that.
We help them out with centralizing a website for their association. So it's easy to search. It's got a lot of your keywords and search engine optimization that is needed. And then it displays their availability. So and anybody that joins the association has the privilege of being listed on that website that the association does own that we provided for them and continue to maintain it. But of course, when they're with ResNexus, they get a lot of built-in email marketing. We can help with campaigns, directing people to the individual property's website as well as the website for the association.
You guys are headquartered in Utah.
Yep.
How would the startup of something like that look like? Would you have a team come out to talk to individual bed and breakfast, or we would have a Zoom meeting like this and a class on how to come together under an umbrella? Maybe the website would be built by ResNexus, or maybe we'd have one, and you would just locate your
Yeah.
guest management system on. How would that work?
It depends on, yeah, if there's an association that wants us to come out, we can come out and speak with the association. And then of course, after that, yeah, usually it's a lot of Zoom calls and in this day and age, we can get so much done through email and just online for them. But we wouldn't hesitate to come out. We actually have some photographers that have come out and helped people out with their photos
Oh, wow.
and things like that. Yeah, make sure that they are presentable and help them out that way. And if they're a ResNexus customer and we're able to make it out that way, we just give those photos to them free of charge.
I'm going to be working with on the startup of this with, as I mentioned earlier, there are 16 regional tourism councils in Massachusetts. And our corridor, and I'll send info on the RTCs, regional tourism councils, to you and Andrew
Okay.
to talk about, to show you how this corridor actually has 7 regional tourism councils it intersects through. Most of them have no clue about this linear park being developed. It's so in the early stages, let's say, but even the thing is 104 miles altogether. 75 miles are going to be open by the end of this year. It'll be 75 miles open. There's big gaps in several areas, and the people largely don't think of it as being assembled. It's a niche topic,
Yeah.
but I'm going to be doing outreach into the regional tourism councils to locate people that potentially would like to operate a bed and breakfast. The it's been my experience that a lot of our customers who come to our bed and breakfast have always toyed with the idea of standing up their own bed and breakfast. And I've seen statistics that 80% of the American adult population have thought of, toyed with, even fleetingly of having their own bed and breakfast. And somehow that is getting merged in with Airbnbs, which are really, they're different. Airbnbs, not owner occupied, are different than owner occupied bed and breakfasts. But I think there can be an awakening that I could probably set up a series of meetings with you guys on Zoom in the
Yeah.
presence of regional tourism councils. Do you think, do you have an inventory of guests, maybe not along these long corridors, but maybe a group of bed and breakfasts in a community or a region that sort of operate under your flag that you can show us and so we can go out and meet up with them locally if
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. Yeah. We keep, obviously, we have a database and we have all of our customers. We have a nice map that shows us where our customers are. And yeah, for Massachusetts, help you out with making those connections.
this is good.
Yeah.
This is
I
perfect.
love how I keep going back to your real estate background, how much of a great synergy this is for you.
All
I,
right.
it's a master
Well,
class.
you think you should think of me as two things. I'm the annoying rain man of rail trails, right?
Oh yeah.
But also, I'm like Forrest Gump. What is Forrest Gump? He's just a guy that kind of went through life and he happened to be going through these places where iconic events were happening right before him and he had no idea what the hell was. I'm like Forrest Gump. I'm passing through all these things. We
Just
set
another
up
day.
we set up the bed and breakfast not so I could make $1 million, but because it's only 2 rooms. You don't quit your day job. But when we set it up, I was a lobbyist in 6 states. And,
Uh-huh.
and I realized that people were coming to stay at our bed and breakfast to go off with their realtor after breakfast and buy a house. And I said, wow, I could become a realtor and they wouldn't leave me. They would come in, we'd have conversations, and then we'd go out together and look at houses.
Yeah.
And the real that was like the second stage of our house, of our bed and breakfast. The first stage, when we first set it up, I was involved in the rail trail wars where people were opposed to the conversion in their neighborhood. And so I set up a bed and breakfast. Our house sits 8 feet from the rail trail. One of the closest house was built before the railroad. The railroad came and they squeezed by 8 feet from our house. The railroad's gone. In 1969 became a trail, and now it's 8 feet from our house. And so I go into pressure packed meetings now and I talk up the idea of building a trail on near former railroad. And there's a lot of opposition, not as much as years ago, but certainly a few places. And so we set up the bed and breakfast so I could go into these places and say, I hear your fear,
Yeah.
but I live 8 feet from one. But I also operate a bed and breakfast. I'll give you a complimentary weeknight stay if you want to come and wake
Oh,
up
look
to the
at that.
laughter of children biking to school. And how many kids bike to school in your town? And so that effectively was a way to negate the opposition. And but we need to think big here. And I just love ResNexus. I just can't stress enough how bulletproof it is. It's just dead on accurate. It even sends an email off to the prospective guests
Yep.
asking them to give me a call when they're 20 minutes out because we live here, but
Yep.
we don't have staff to hang around waiting for guests. And so we have our normal lives, but we'll circle back. You call us back, you call us when you're 20 minutes out, we're right there. So, what else do you think we should need to talk about here today, David?
I think that I'm really liking the synergies that you have there. Makes me think of some of the conversion rates and complementing the websites and things like that. Conversion rate is huge when people finally find the business and making sure that they're turning into customers for you. We make that very easy. I'm hoping that you have your availability calendar up and available for them. They can see
Yep,
that. The joining the wait list with you having 2 units, I can imagine busy weekends, people are joining that wait list, and that gives you
right.
even more customers, potential customers that will receive your emails, your newsletters, things like that. And I'm not talking about blasting or just bombing them with a bunch of emails, but holiday greetings, things like that. Like you said, you're in fall foliage right now. Uh,
Yep,
there's customers that have probably come to your website, looked at your availability, and saw that, gosh dang it, he's booked for the next few weekends. And if they've joined the wait list, then they're going to receive that email marketing from you and hopefully get another opportunity to hook that potential
yes,
customer and get them back
you're
for you.
absolutely right. You
Yeah.
know, a two-room bed and breakfast, as you might imagine, we fill up quickly, but it's, I just can't stress how bulletproof it is. It's just, it puts the bed and breakfast operator at ease that the worst nightmare can't take place. That is the double booking, the two
Yes.
people showing up for the same room at the same time. That cannot happen here. And so it makes it seamless and stress free here. And just people show up when they're supposed to. The There's so much about this. I'm not a numbers guy, and I know a lot of, if we were, matter of fact, I have friends who just retiring as a 7 unit bed and breakfast, not near a rail trail, but near a developing bikeway, but they're going to age out and they're not going to be able to do this. But they'll be on my podcast sometime, and they use Reservation
Nice.
Nexus too. And it's a benefit that a lot of people don't realize is out there, that you can have this. You don't have to become an Airbnb. That's just not really the proper way to do this. The proper way to do this is to become part of an association that is
Yes.
broad throughout the region.
Build a brand, right?
Yes, build a brand. Yes. Yes. Here's a question. What are the best tools for smaller operators? What are your best tools that you have, do you think? And not like smaller operators like me as opposed to big chain hotels. There's not going to be chain hotels out in central Massachusetts here. It's going to be largely small opera. What are the best tools that you think are attractive?
I mean, it depends on where they're at in their business. Someone that's starting out might need to put a little bit more investment involved. Your number one marketing tool should always be your own website. A lot of folks during COVID were just relying on like an Airbnb. What happened during COVID? I understand this didn't happen to everybody, but it was enough that our phones were ringing off the hook. And it would always be someone in saying, Airbnb, VRBO, they just canceled our reservations for the next several months. And they didn't even ask us about it. It's like being in
Hmm,
business with someone that just makes an executive decision to almost destroy your business. And so our phone calls will be like, what do we need to do? We need our own website, which we do offer websites, but there's a lot of good website companies out there. And then they wanted to have their own direct reservations. And those are the top two things. And then it would come to associations. Who can you join? Even if it's a Facebook association, but I like where you're going with more of a local, keeping everybody in that area with the bike trail. So you're going to find that your 2 rooms is all booked up, but the other properties that are involved in your association will benefit from you referring to them or things that you can attract. Get to know the community and hey, when you're full, can you mention us so we can keep that customer here? Let's not have the customer go and stay at the Hyatt or the Hilton. Let's have them stay in our unique lodging. That's so important. Now, if you have it in the budget, you can always do like a Facebook ad or a Google ads. You're talking easily $500 to $1,000 for those to be effective, and they can be a little bit hit and miss. It's going to push a lot of people to your website, but a lot of times a new business doesn't have that in the budget. If they do, great,
right.
go ahead and do that. Then it would come down to getting on the third parties because again, you're going to get some exposure. You're not going to pay anything unless they send you a paying customer. And I spend more time talking people out of using the OTAs because you guys are in such a beautiful state with such a high demand. Sometimes people don't need them. I've
That's
had
right.
properties that have 5 years later, they're like, you know what, we just went ahead and gone off the OTAs, the online travel agencies, and we're just going to rely on return guests, our built-in email marketing. So email marketing is part of that. Once you get established, email marketing is still the most cost-effective form of marketing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you could have 1,200, 2,000 people in your database. You send out a fall foliage email or a Happy New Year's email, and you get two or three reservations from that. And it took you, oh, really, what, 25 minutes to put together?
Mhm.
And with ResNexus, that's built in, so you could send that out, kind of like a MailChimp type of thing.
I'm going to give you another example in the Northeast here
Yeah.
of a successful long rail trail. And I've written 3 books on this topic and have been touring this stuff for 30 years this year. Outside of Montreal, in the Laurentian Mountains, there was an old dead railroad. It used to be called Petit Train du Nord, Little Train of the North. So it heads northwest away from Montreal, and it goes 200 kilometers, actually about 230 kilometers now into the northwest. And it's a provincial park, a state park. And when we did it 20 years ago, before the internet was robust, like what we're talking about now, wasn't available back then. And you'd make a phone call to the provincial tourist agency and say, I want to go on Petit Train de Nord. And they'd say, okay, we want you to show up at this place closest to Montreal. You have to be there night before so you can be there waiting for the van at 7:30 in the morning. We're then going to transport you to the far end, and then you're going to bike back to the beginning end. And you're going to tell us what kind of place you want to stay in. Do you want to stay in a lowly tenting campground? Do you want to stay in a palatial estate? And so we chose all the places like our place, like mid-range, right?
Yeah.
And yes, we're going to choose that option to have all of our luggage shuttled by neighbors going to the next bed and breakfast. It's like all these elder people looking for a little sideline job. They're going to take your luggage to the next, so you don't have to carry the extra weight on your bike. And so we chose all the options and we showed up at the right time, the right place. They shuttled us to the far end and then came all the way back. And it was the most well thought out marketing bed and breakfast tour that I had ever seen. It's starting to come in New York, which is my second favorite long trail, which is the Erie Canal Trail, 300 miles long,
Okay.
Buffalo to Albany,
Yeah.
on a flat towpath that used to be a towpath for mules and or oxen to pull canal boats along the canal. The
Okay.
canal goes all the way along this thing, 300 miles long. There's communities every 6 miles because that was the range for the oxen or mules before they had to be switched out and
Right.
fed and watered. And so towns grew up to service the animals. It is like no other experience you can get in the United States.
Wow.
And so we envision the same thing here. And so I want to be able to have this become a regional tourism council unto
Okay.
itself. I want to have an umbrella over it. It actually intersects with 18 other trails, like feeder lines to this massive 100-mile trail in Massachusetts.
Right.
And so this is right up your alley. I'm going to stay in touch with you guys about this. What have I missed here today? What do you think, Dave? What do you think we need to think about?
Yeah, we've covered a lot here. I talked about the OTAs. I think
Here's
we've
something I just thought
well,
of.
yeah.
There, thinking of Worcester County in Massachusetts, flyover country, there's not a lot of accommodations there. I
Okay.
expect to see there's some Airbnbs there. They're not even on the radar screen of the municipality in terms of paying taxes. As we uncover Airbnbs, do you think that you're in this world and straddling both worlds with your OTA concept or
Yeah.
conversation? What conversation do we have to have with an existing Airbnb to be able to entice them to become part of our group? They can stay in Airbnb, maybe they'll like it more and get away from that, but maybe there's going to be a process to entice them to become part of what conversation what we need to have there.
Well, yeah, I can tell you what I've experienced over the years, which is they want to talk about building their own brand. And Airbnb is upping their rates right now. I don't know if you knew that. The property owner is going to be responsible for 100% of the commission, where Airbnb was splitting it between the customer and the property owner.
Oh,
Could
wow.
be a great opportunity if you're looking at the converting them. Say, hey, you're going to be paying a lot more in commissions. How would you like to cut that in half? How would you like to
You
build
didn't
your
even
own
know that.
brand? And the hurdle that you're going to have is the investment of a website going to be worth it to them? You're going to offer, if you can offer that association page, that could be an in without having the website at first. So that could cut down some of that startup switch over costs. But yeah, yeah, build your own brand. Don't be, you'd never want to put all your eggs in one basket. And that's what you're doing with Airbnb. And now that they're raising the rates, they got you with your arms behind your back,
Yeah,
so to speak. And
yeah.
so be prepared. Uh,
Okay, that's
you
good
know,
to know. I didn't realize that. And so this allows us to flesh out a good protocol to be able to entice people to convert their house into a bed and breakfast and get some Airbnbs to join the team here and build a good group, that cross-state group here.
now, do you offer a breakfast?
We do, yes, we have what's called an expanded continental breakfast.
Okay.
In Massachusetts, there's two levels of permitting from the Board of Health at the given community. The
Okay.
expanded continental breakfast means that we don't cook anything, but we're
Yes.
lucky to live in a place that has lots of bakeries. So we can, Kathy, in the morning, like we're going to have guests arriving here tonight, and we're going to be asking what kind of baked goods do you like in the morning? We're going to have our granola, yogurt, and fruit, but we
Yeah.
we want to go out and get just the kind of baked goods. You want a croissant, you want muffins, bagels, what do you want? And so
That, yeah, and that's good to know. I would start with that because I imagine a lot of the Airbnbs would say, I'm cooking a breakfast isn't part of the main job, right? So a lot of them are in the same situation with you and I, where we have a main job and then we have this real estate investment, and it doesn't pay all the bills. So chances are you're going to be dealing with folks that have other jobs, and so definitely lead in with you can classify yourself by using local baked goods and yogurts and things like that, where you're actually never really baking anything. I have seen trends go that way though as well. Some of my bed and breakfasts that would spend hours preparing gourmet breakfasts only to find out that the customer wants a cup of coffee.
that's right. Right.
So
Yeah.
it depends on what you can do, what you feel is going to be your business model. So,
The most fun bed and breakfast we ever stayed at was in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. It was an old 17-room traditional inn in Gettysburg with the National Park Service unit, the Civil War battlefield. There was a young couple from Massachusetts who moved there because they wanted to buy this place, and his mother was part of the deal. And she had her own room where she lived there, but she was part of the team that ran the bed and breakfast.
yeah,
And he was a classically trained chef, and he had five different choices, like a restaurant for breakfast that you could, like this glam restaurant choices for breakfast that he was really loving to do. He lived to make breakfasts. And
yeah,
that was a lot of fun. That was in, boy, we were just starting up ours. We took a short vacation to go down there. It was right after 9/11. And boy, very
yeah.
memorable experience. It was great.
Very nice.
Yeah. I want to thank you here, David, for taking time out of your busy day to come here and talk about bed and breakfast and talk about the future. And
It's not just a job, it's a passion. We
oh,
love working with the business owners.
that's right.
So,
We meet people. We've had people been doing this 22 years from 48 of the 50 states. Don't ask me the two that are missing, but it might be the Dakotas or something like that. But we've had people from 12 countries, and it's just,
wow.
yeah, it's so much fun.
Great. Well, it was nice meeting you, and it was a
Nice
pleasure.
meeting you.
A lot of fun.
And I'll be back in touch. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye, David.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Roads Less Traveled with Craig Della Penna. I hope today's episode gave you fresh ideas and inspiration for exploring the unique world of real estate, rail trails, and bike tourism. Be sure to subscribe, like, and share the show so we can reach more trail lovers and real estate enthusiasts like you. Stay connected, stay curious, and I'll see you next week with more expert insights and stories from the Roads Less Traveled.